Greetings. Once upon a time in ancient Persia, there was an empire, and the emperor was a good guy. Everybody loved him, the land was prosperous, and he ruled for many years. He had two sons. The elder one's name was Shahryar, and the other one was Shah Zaman. So after many years that he ruled with prosperity and joy and everybody hanging around and having fun, with a lifetime of achievements, the great emperor passes away and his elder son sits on the throne. Then Shahryar makes his younger brother king of Samarkand, and they also rule for many years over the lands and prosperous and joy and happy and love and everything fine. There comes a day that Shahryar misses his younger brother and he wants to see him, and he decides to go on a journey to visit his brother. But when he discusses this idea with his vizier, the vizier suggests that it might not be the best idea that the great emperor rides on a journey just because he misses his brother, and instead they should invite the brother to the capital so that they can hang out together. Easy. Having accepted this advice, the king forthwith bade prepare handsome gifts such as horses with saddles of gem-encrusted gold, Mamelukes, beautiful handmaids, high-breasted virgins, and splendid stuff and costly. He then wrote a letter to Shah Zaman expressing his warm love and great wish to see him, ending with these words: "We therefore hope of the favor and affection of the beloved brother, that he will condescend to bestir himself and turn his face uswards. Furthermore, we have sent our vizier to make our ordinance for the march, and our one and only desire is to see thee ere we die. But if thou delay or disappoint us, we shall not survive the blow, wherewith peace be upon thee." So the vizier gets on the journey, goes to Samarkand in order to visit Shah Zaman and give him the letter and the gifts and invite him back to the capital. And along the way, there's all these traditions of hospitality that, here it goes. Whenever he entered the realm whose ruler was subject to his suzerain, where he was greeted with magnificent gifts of gold and silver, and all manner of presents fair and rare, he would tarry there 3 days in term of the guest right, and when he left on the 4th, he would be honorably escorted for a whole day's march. This is fabulous. So the vizier arrives at Samarkand and goes to visit. They come to escort him. They go to the capital. They go directly to the palace. He visits Shah Zaman and he gives him the letter that Shahryar wrote and the gifts and all that. And when the king fully understands the gravity of the situation, he says, "I hear and I obey the commands of the beloved brother. But we will not march till after the 3rd day's hospitality." Again, the traditions come in. So they hang out and have fun for 3 days, and on the 4th, they get the caravan ready and get into the journey. They set up camp outside of the city. Shah Zaman goes there, and when they are spending the night over there to get ready for the long journey to go to the capital, he realizes something rather important. But when the night was half spent, he bethought him that he had forgotten in his palace somewhat which he should have brought with him. So he returned privily and entered his apartment, where he found his queen, his wife, asleep on his own carpet bed, embracing with both arms a black cook of loathsome aspect and foul with kitchen grease and grime. When he saw this, the world waxed black before his sight, and he said, "If such case happen while I am yet within sight of the city, what will be the doings of this damned whore during my long absence at my brother's court?" Can you guess what he did afterwards? I guess not. Let me paint a picture for you. He draws a sword, and with a single blow divides those two poor, horny bastards into 4 pieces. By the way, this is a Christmas gift. I wanted to record this episode before I sent out my Christmas gifts. Now that that's out of the way, let's continue. Of course, he was really sad and he couldn't eat and he turned yellow, and the vizier noticed that. So the vizier decided that they should go full speed ahead to visit the emperor. After a long journey, they finally arrive at the capital. The city was like a carnival. Everybody was on the street to escort the king, brother king that came from a long journey. The vizier and everybody, the elites, were lining up to visit them, and the grand emperor came out. When, however, the brothers met, the elder could not but see the change of complexion in the younger, and questioned him of his case, whereto he replied, "'Tis caused by the travails of warfare, and my case needs care. For I have suffered from the change of water and air. But God be praised for reuniting me with a brother so dear and so rare." And this wise he dissembled and kept his secret, adding, "O king of the time and caliph of the tide, only toil and moil have tinged my face yellow with bile, and hath made my eyes sink deep in my head." Then the two entered the capital in all honor, and the elder brother lodged the younger in a palace overhanging the pleasure gardens. And after a time, seeing his condition still unchanged, he attributed it to his separation from his country and kingdom. One day, his elder brother said to him, "I am going forth to hunt and course, and to take my pleasure and pastime. Maybe this would lighten thy heart." Shah Zaman, however, refused, saying, "O my brother, my soul yearneth for naught of this sort, and I entreat thy favour to suffer me tarry quietly in this place, being wholly taken up with my malady." So King Shah Zaman passed his night in the palace, and next morning when his brother had fared forth, he removed from his room and sat him down at one of the lattice windows overlooking the pleasure grounds. And there he abode, thinking with saddest thoughts over his wife's betrayal, and burning sighs issued from his tortured breast. And as he continued in this case, a postern of the palace, which was carefully kept private, swung open, and out of it came 20 slave girls surrounding his brother's wife, who was wondrous fair, a model of beauty and comeliness and symmetry and perfect loveliness, and who paced with the grace of a gazelle which panteth for the cooling stream. Thereupon Shah Zaman drew back from the window, but he kept the bevy in sight, espying them from a place whence he could not be seen. It's getting interesting, right? They walked under the very lattice and advanced a little way into the garden till they came to the jetting fountain, amiddlemost a great basin of water. Then they stripped off their clothes, and behold, 10 of them were women, concubines of the king, and the other 10 were white slaves. Then they all paired off, each with each but the queen, who was left alone, presently cried out in a loud voice, "Hear to me, O my lord Said!" And then sprang with a drop lip from one of the trees, a big, slobbering blackamoor with rolling eyes, which showed the whites a truly hideous sight. He walked boldly up to her, and threw his arms around her neck while she embraced him as warmly. Then he bussed her, and winding his legs around her, as a button loop clasps a button, he threw her and enjoyed her. Unlikewise did the other slaves with the girls, till all had satisfied their passions, and they ceased not from kissing and clipping, coupling and carousing, till day began to wane. When the Mamelukes rose from the damsels' bosoms, and the blackamoor slave dismounted from the queen's breast, the men resumed their disguises and all, except the negro, who swarmed up the tree, entered the palace, and closed the postern door as before. Holy shit. Wow. There are two lessons to be learned here. One is that no matter how successful I am, even if I'm king of the world, there will be a man who is more desirable in bed than me. And the second lesson to learn is that this is so fucking racist. I don't know how they wrote it. I don't know if this was the original. I mean, I read the Persian one, which is 40 years older than this edition, and it's from 1840s, that Persian translation. This English translation, which is the first English translation, is from 1880s. So either the original story was super racist, and the people back then and there were super racist, or the translator had projected his racist ideology into words when he was translating these stories. Because when I was reading the Persian text, I didn't feel like this. I don't know. This is too much. Brace yourselves. Anyway, after witnessing these events, Shah Zaman realizes that his suffering and the betrayal he experienced is nothing when compared to his older brother. So in light of these events and this realization, the appetite comes back and he starts to eat and he starts to recover and he feels better. He's not looking yellow as before. Then, when Shahryar comes back from the hunting session, he looks at his brother and says, "Oh, my brother, I was so anxious that thou wouldst join me in the hunting and chasing, and wouldst take thy pleasure and pastime in my dominion." He thanked him and excused himself. Then the two took horse and rode into the city. When they were seated at the rees in the palace, the food trays were set before them, and they ate their sufficiency. After the meats were removed and they had washed their hands, King Shahryar turned to his brother and said, "My mind is overcome with wonderment at thy condition. I was desirous to carry thee with me to the chase, but I saw thee changed in hue, pale and wan to view, and in sore trouble of mind too. But now, glory be to God, I see thy natural colour hath returned to thy face, and that thou art again is the best of case. It was my belief that thy sickness came of severance from thy family and friends, an absence from capital and country, so I refrained from troubling thee with further questions. But now I beseech thee to expound to me the cause of thy complaint and thy change of colour, and to explain the reason of thy recovery and the return to the ruddy hue of health, which I am wont to view. So speak out and hide naught." When Shah Zaman heard this, he bowed groundwards awhile his head, then raised it and said, "I will tell thee what caused my complaint and my loss of colour, but excuse my acquainting thee with the cause of its return to me, and the reason of my complete recovery. Indeed, I pray thee not to press me for a reply." So Shahryar half accepted to the conditions of Shah Zaman, And Shah Zaman went on explaining what happened to him and how he reacted, and then he came back, and after a few days he felt better and blah blah blah. But as Shahryar was listening to his story, he said, "By God, had the case been mine, I would not have been satisfied without slaying 1,000 women, and that way madness lies." Foreshadowing much. So Shah Zaman resisted on telling the reason for his recovery, and Shahryar insisted on hearing the reason for his recovery. In the end, Shah Zaman gave up and gave him the whole story, to which he replied, "O my brother, I would not give thee the lie in this matter, but I cannot credit it till I see it with mine own eyes." As a result of this discussion, Shah Zaman suggested that you should plan for another chase and hunt. Do exactly the same thing as I did last time. Go out, tell no one, come back, and we both will sit at the window overviewing the pleasure gardens and see if anything happens. So they did it. Again, the same story happened, even more racist depictions this time. Then, when King Shahryar saw this infamy of his wife and concubines, he became as one distraught, and he cried out, "Only in utter solitude can man be safe from the doings of the wild world. By God, life is naught but one great wrong. Do not thwart me, O my brother, in what I propose." And the brother said, "I will not. Let us up, as we are, and depart fortnight hence, for we have no concern with kingship, and let us over wander God's earth, worshipping the Almighty, till we find someone to whom the like calamity hath happened. And if we find none, then will death be more welcome to us than life." So the two brothers wandered off into the land, and they went and went for days and nights until they arrived at a well on the shores of a salt sea. So they sat down and drank from the water, rested under the shadow of a tree. As this happened, they heard a mighty roar and uproar in the middle of the main, as though the heavens were falling upon the earth, and the sea brake with waves before them, and from it towered a black pillar, which grew and grew till it rose skywards and began making for the meadow. Seeing it, they waxed fearful exceedingly, and climbed to the top of the tree, whence they gazed to see what might be the matter. And behold, it was a jinni, huge of height and burly of breast and bulk, broad of brow and black of blee, bearing on his head a coffer of crystal. He strode to land, wanding through the deep, and coming to the tree whereupon were the two kings, seated himself beneath it. He then set down the coffer on its bottom, and out of it drew a casket with 7 padlocks of steel, which he unlocked with 7 keys of steel he took from beside his thigh. And out of it a young lady to come was seen, white skinned and of winsomest mien, of a stature fine and thin, and bright as though a moon of the 14th night she had been, or the sun raining lively sheen. Even so the poet Otaya hath excellently said, "She rose like the morn as she shone through the night, and she gilded the grove with her gracious sight. From her radiance the sun taketh increase, when she unveiled and shameth the moonshine bright. Bow down all beings between her hands, as she showeth charms with her veil undight. And she floodeth cities with torrent tears, when she flasheth her look of levee light. The genie seated her under the tree by his side, and looking at her said, O choicest love of this heart of mine, O dame of noblest line, whom I snatched away on thy bride night, that none might prevent me taking thy maiden head, or tumble thee before I did, and whom none save myself hath loved or hath enjoyed. O my sweetheart, I would leave sleep a little while. He then laid his head upon the lady's thighs, stretching out his legs, which expanded down to the sea, slept and snored and snarked like a roll of thunder. As this story unfolds, our brother kings are watching it from the top of the tree, and she is sitting down with the genie on his legs. She looks up and sees brother kings, gently lifts the genie's head, putting him down, and gesturing the kings to come down. She whispers, if you don't come down, I will fuck you up. I will make him up, and he will fuck you up. After they came down, the lady continues on this matter, and she says, stroke me a strong stroke, without stay or delay. Otherwise I will arouse and set upon you this Ifrit, who shall slay you straightway. First they tried to get out of the situation, but they weren't able to, so they had to satisfy her. I don't know if they did it simultaneously or one after the other, but as the action was finished, she said, well done. Well done. She then took from her pocket a purse and drew out a knotted string whereon were strung 570 seal rings, and asked, know ye what be these? They answered, we know not. Then quoth she, these be the signets of 570 men, who have all futtered me upon the horns of this foul, this foolish, this filthy Ifrit. So give me also your 2 seal rings, ye pair of brothers. When they had drawn the 2 rings from their hands and given them to her, she said to them, of a truth, this Ifrit bore me off on my bride night, and put me into a casket, and set the casket in a coffer, and to the coffer he affixed 7 strong padlocks of steel, and deposited me on the deep bottom of the sea that raves, dashing and clashing with waves, and guarded me so that I might remain chaste and honest, quotha, that none save himself might have connection with me. But I have lain under as many of my kind as I please, and this wretched genie wotteth not that destiny may not be averted nor hindered by aught, and that whatso woman willeth, the same she fulfilleth, however man nilleth. So after hearing her story, our brother kings were astonished and said, there be no majesty and there be no might save in God, the glorious, the great, and with him we seek refuge from women's malice and sleight. For of a truth it hath no mate and might. Consider, O my brother, the ways of this marvelous lady with an Ifrit, who is so much more powerful than we are. Now, since there hath happened to him is a greater mishap than that which befell us, and which should bear us abundant consolation. So we return to our countries and capitals, and let us decide never to intermarry with womankind, and presently we will show them what will be our action. After experiencing all these events, our two brother kings came back to the capital. Shah Zaman asked for permission and he left for his own country to get back to what he was doing. I mean, he recovered, he was feeling good. I assume that he will be a good king afterwards. But Shahryar remained and he ordered all of those people who were in the pleasure gardens to be executed. Not a huge surprise. And the surprise is here. Listen to this. He also swore himself by a binding oath that whatever wife he married, he would abate her maidenhead at night and slay her next morning to make sure of his honor. For he said, there never was, nor is there one chaste woman upon the face of earth. Did you get his logic? It doesn't work like this, man. He believes that all women are malice, but he doesn't want to give up sex. Dude. Yeah, so the first night happened. The vizier brought a beautiful girl to the king and they slept together. And the next morning, the vizier had to execute the girl. This is awful. On this wise, he continued for the space of 3 fucking years, marrying a maiden every night and killing her the next morning, till folk raised an outcry against him and cursed him, praying God utterly to destroy him and his rule. And women made an uproar, and mothers wept, and parents fled with the daughters, till there remained not in the city a young person fit for carnal copulation. So, no girls left in the city, and the king orders for another one. The vizier goes for a search and he can't find any. Now he had 2 daughters, Shahrazad and Dunyazad, one of whom, the elder, had pursued the books, annals, and legends of preceding kings, and the stories, examples, and instances of bygone men and things. Indeed, it was said that she had collected 1,000 books of histories relating to antique races and departed rulers. She had pursued the works of the poets and knew them by heart. She had studied philosophy and the sciences, arts, and accomplishments, and she was pleasant and polite, wise and witty, well-read and well-bred. Now on that day she said to her father, why do I see thee thus changed and laden with cark and care? Connecting this matter, quoth one of the poets, tell whoso hath sorrow, grief never shall last. Even as joy hath no morrow, so woe shall go past. After a long conversation, she gives him a suggestion. So she says, you should bring me to the king tonight. Of course, the father objects, and then the vizier was again moved to fury and blame and reproached her, ending with, in very deed, I fear lest the same befall thee which befell the bull and the ass with the husbandman. And what befell them, O my father? Whereupon the vizier began the tale of the bull and the ass. That's it for tonight. Cheers.